Hi everyone, this is Spuggyhawk and welcome to Turtle Time. In this episode we'll be setting up a farm and making a farming turtle to deal with our crops. But before we get started with that, there are a couple of things to catch up with. At the end of the last episode, I left you with the task of writing a fuel collection function for the log collector turtle. If you did that, well done and thanks for getting involved. Here's my function for that. The turtle will need to go up and over the furnace, make sure it's going to refill slot 1, and then keep sucking in charcoal until it has 32. After that, it returns to its starting position by going up and back over the furnace. I've made sure that the forester and log collector turtles access the charcoal chest from different sides. That way, if one of them is waiting, it won't block the path for the other one. I've fenced off the forest, but this throws a spanner in the works. Well, a fence post anyway, for the forester's refueling function. It's a nice and easy fix though. Just add a turtle up before approaching the charcoal chest to get over the fence, and a turtle down to get level with the chest. The same needs to be done when going back to the home position. Turtle up before moving away from the chest, and a turtle down after it's arrived back home. Another thing I've spotted with the forester is that it's a bit too efficient at collecting saplings. This has led to the problem that the chest that should only contain logs also has saplings in it. This in turn will lead to problems for the charcoal manufacturing because the log collector is going to come across and pick up things from the chest, and in some cases that's going to be saplings. When they get dropped into the furnace, everything will grind to a halt. Again, this isn't a difficult thing to fix. We can add a test to see if we have enough saplings and only do the sapling collection when we drop below that level. But how do we decide what that level should be? Well, if we have too few saplings in the inventory, we could run out. It's possible that we might harvest all the trees a couple of times and not actually pick up any new saplings, and if we have less than 8 in the inventory, we'd run out. At the other end of things, we might pick up a lot of saplings on a collection run, perhaps as many as 10 or 12. We don't want to hold more than a stack of 64, or we haven't solved the problem. So why not simply go for the middle ground of 32? We'll only collect saplings if we have less than 32 in the inventory. That way we shouldn't run out and we shouldn't exceed 64. To let me know what's going on, I'll update the text that gets displayed when it's working that out. So if the item count of slot 2, the saplings, is less than 32, then we can go and collect some. Else, we can just display a message saying that we don't need to. Whilst I'm here, I've noticed that the forester turtle never waits long enough for all 4 trees to grow. I'm going to increase the sleep time from 48 to 60. Now we can move on to setting up a little farm. We'll set up a farm area and then fence that off. Let's start with a trench down the middle with a block at each side for crops. Eventually it would be nice to have all the different kinds of crops, but for now we'll have to start with wheat, pumpkins, cactus and sugarcane. Only the wheat needs to be replanted after it's harvested, so I won't be writing any code for the farming turtle to plant the other crops. I'll do that manually, but we will be getting the turtle to harvest them. Cactus will only grow on sand, and it has to have at least 1 block of space between each cactus. So I'll put 3 blocks of sand here, here, and here. Sugarcane can only be planted directly next to water, so I'll plant that along here. Pumpkins grow from a stalk and produce their fruit in the block next to that. So I'll plant one here, but the dirt needs to be hoed first. The farming turtle will take care of the hoeing and planting of wheat, so there's no need to do any extra preparation for that now. The space that's left will be taken up with carrots, potatoes and watermelons when I find some. Now we can fence off the area. I like to put a block of stone underneath my gates so that I can spot them more easily from a distance. Now to create our farmer. We'll start with another turtle for the base, and then we'll add a diamond hoe to create the farming turtle. As usual, a turtle is just created with 7 stone, 1 redstone and a glass pane to make a computer. Then the computer with a chest surrounded by 7 iron to make the turtle. We turn it into a farming turtle by adding a diamond hoe. Okay, we can take that outside and place it next to the disk drive so that it can use the same disk as before. And if we put a chest next to it, that can be used to store all the crops that are harvested. It's a straight line from where the turtle now is, right down the cactus and sugarcane, and then we can just turn around and come back to collect the other crops. But for a start, let's find out how far it is to get to this first piece of cactus. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 11 spaces forward will get us directly onto that cactus. So let's get started with the program. Rather than retyping everything every time, let's get a copy of the log collector program and just modify that. You can rename it at the same time as copying it by just providing the new name. In this case, we'll call it Farmer. So edit the Farmer program and change the name in the comment at the top. That's just so that when we're editing a file, we know which one we're actually dealing with. Now we can modify the collect fuel function. Unlike the log collector, this one doesn't need to go up and over the furnace. All it needs to do is move forward 2 spaces and turn right. We can still suck charcoal in just as we did before, but this time we don't need to go back up and over the furnace, we just need to turn left and back up 2 spaces. We also need to have a look at the check fuel function. At the moment, this one only checks to make sure we've got 80 fuel units. Now that's probably not going to be enough for this farming turtle, because the farming turtle's got quite a long way to travel and quite a lot of up and down movement to do, as well as all the harvesting. We should try to make sure it's got at least 160 fuel units. This also means we need to change the if into a while, in case it needs to do this more than once. We can now delete all the code down to the go home function. We'll keep that one, but it will need rewriting, so we can just empty it for now. There are still some useful things in the main program we can keep. We'll still want to do the fuel checking, we'll still want to go home, and we'll still want to do the delay between runs. But we can delete the rest of the code and replace that with function calls to functions we're going to create next in order to do the harvesting. To keep things readable in the main code, we'll have a single function to harvest all the crops, followed by the go home. the harvest crops function, in turn, will split down into 4 more functions. One for cactus, one for sugarcane, one for pumpkin, and one for wheat. Then we can have a closer look at the farm as we create each of those functions to make sure that we're going to get the turtles to do the right things. Adding the empty function declarations now will help make sure that we don't miss anything later. Okay, so harvesting the cactus. As we checked earlier, it's 11 spaces to get to the first cactus. However, we don't want to do this at ground level because there's a gate in the way, and we don't want to harvest the cactus from the bottom because the rest of it above will collapse. So the best way to harvest a cactus is to go directly above it and then harvest down the way. This also applies to sugarcane. A cactus will grow to 3 blocks high, as will sugarcane, so we need to be 4 blocks high as we approach the cactus to make sure that we don't bump into it. We can also avoid the gate, and if I happen to be wandering around in front of where the turtle is, it'll go over the top of me as well. So this is 3 turtle dot up function calls in a row. Personally, I like to put that into a for loop because it's 3 lines, and the for loop itself will take up 3 lines as well, and it's easier to change later, but there's no hard and fast rule for that. When we get above the cactus, we know we need to do the same thing 3 times, 1 for each cactus. So we can put that into a for loop. But what do we actually want to do when we've got to the top of the cactus? Well, to start with, we need to dig down to take the top block, then move down into the space we've created. Then dig down again to get the middle block, but we don't need to move down again after that. We can leave the bottom block to keep growing. So then we need to move up again to get back to the same height we started at. Then the last thing we need to do in this loop, to make sure that we're in the same starting position for each cactus, is to move forward twice. And that should be all we need to do to harvest all 3 cactus. So to quickly visualize what we'll be achieving there, we'll harvest the top 2 blocks of the first cactus and move along 2. Harvest the top 2 blocks of the second cactus and move along 2. And then harvest the top 2 blocks of the last cactus and move along 2. That rather conveniently puts us at the top of the first sugarcane. So with sugarcane, it's almost exactly the same process. Harvesting the top 2 blocks and then moving along, but in this case we're only moving along 1. At the end of that process, we will just have gone 1 block past the last sugarcane, which happens to be level with the pumpkin stalk at the opposite side of the trench. A pumpkin will grow 1 block away from its stalk. In this case, there is only 1 space it can actually grow into. So if we turn right, go across the trench, turn right again, we'll be directly above the stalk, so we can move one forward, and that will be where the pumpkin is. Bear in mind, we're actually quite high up in the air after harvesting the cactus and sugarcane. We need to come down 2 blocks to be one above the pumpkin. The final crop we're harvesting is the wheat. But there's quite a gap between where the pumpkin is and the wheat. This is so we can put some more crops in there later. I'd like to have 8 wheat at this end of the farm to give us a reasonable yield. So we need to know how many spaces we need to move to get from the pumpkin to that first wheat. As it turns out, there are 8 spaces after the pumpkin. Harvesting wheat is slightly different to harvesting the other crops. In the case of all the other crops that we've got at the moment, we leave something behind that will grow into the next crop. When you harvest wheat, you get the wheat, but you also get some seeds, and then left with a patch of bare ground. We need to replant seeds for the next crop of wheat. So we need to be carrying seeds in a known slot in the inventory. I always like to use the first slot for fuel, so in this case the second slot will carry the seeds. Selecting the seeds in the inventory raises another little issue. We don't want that selected when we're harvesting other crops, so we should really make sure that we've selected slot 3 before harvesting anything. I'll go through the code and add that to each of the functions. And the last thing to do is to get the turtle to go home when it's finished all the harvesting. We'll be sitting just above the fence after the wheat. So we can turn right, move forward a couple of spaces, turn left to face the home position, and then to avoid bumping into me if I'm hanging around, we'll go up again, forwards the 5 spaces to the home position, and then down. From there we can turn right, empty the cargo into the chest, and then turn right again, and we're back into the starting position. I'm going to put the cargo management into a separate function because we're going to do something new here. The basic principle is the same as before. We're going to step through each slot from 3 to 16 and drop whatever's in it into the chest. However, in order to make sure that we don't run out of seeds, any seeds we find in that process, we're going to try and consolidate into slot 2. How do you do that? Let's have a look at the Turtle API. You'll see that there's a function called compare to. What that lets you do is compare what is in the currently selected slot with any other slot. So as we step through the slots 3 to 16, we can look to see if what's in it is the same as what's in slot 2, the seeds. And if it is, then we can do something with it. And of course, that's the next trick. How do we move it from the slot we found into slot 2? Again, let's have a quick look at the API. There's a transfer to function. Transfer to lets you move things from one slot in the Turtle's inventory into another slot. You can specify how many items to move if you wish, but if you don't specify that, it will try to move all of them. Any it can't move will just be left where they are. That means if we find any seeds, we can try to move those into slot 2. If slot 2 is already full, it doesn't matter, they'll just be left where they are. We can then just transfer what's left into the chest. And now for your amusement, I present a couple of silly bugs. First things first, when you run it, nothing happens. It just turns to the right. Is it trying to access charcoal from the disk drive? Let's put it back to where it should be and have a look at the code. Okay, well it looks like it's trying to collect fuel. Why is it not moving? It's because it didn't have any fuel in to start with. It's doing the test for collecting fuel before it ever even tries to refuel. Rather than rewrite the code here, let's just get it to refuel and try that again. Okay, run it again. Right, it's gone to get some fuel, but it's not getting any fuel. Okay, well it's not doing anything else, so let's stop it again with Ctrl-T. Let's have a look at the code. Collecting fuel, well it's done the 2 forwards and turned right, it's selected 1, and it's trying to get the fuel by doing a suck down, because we copied it from the log collector. It should just be doing a suck to get the charcoal from in front of it. Let's try one more time. Yep, it's moved forward and it's collecting fuel this time. Let's see if it actually does its whole run. It should stop collecting fuel at 32. Back to the starting position. Oh, yes, I saw it move up, so it's off. Oh, we've got some grown cactus, that's handy. Yes, it's collecting the cactus nicely. And across, yes, it's collecting the sugarcane too. Now, the pumpkin's there. Down for the pumpkin, excellent. Now there is no wheat at the moment, but the dig with a hoe attachment will cause it to actually hoe the ground. So it will dig and then plant. That's absolutely fantastic. And then back to the home position. That's good. Dump everything in the chest. No seeds collected this time, so it wouldn't have done any of that. One last thing to deal with. We should make the delay between harvests considerably longer than we do for trees or the charcoal. That's to give the wheat chance to grow. In the next episode, we'll actually check the state of the wheat before we try to harvest it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.